I have here a slimmed down version of our projection file, and I've gotten rid of a bunch of geometry and trashed all the textures. So to start out and create our fog, what we're going to do is rely on some of the canned pre-built stuff that Maya offers when you get Maya. So to access those, if you go up to Window, General Editors, and you go to Visor, it gives you a big long list of paint effects and different fluid things like that. And you can use these. I don't know that people use these actually very much, or if anybody really knows about this. It's kind of a legacy thing that's been in there for a long time. But if you go over here to Fluid Examples, there is a Clouds and Fog category here, and you can import these into your file, and it's a fast way of getting something nice, and then you can kind of tweak it the way that you want. And so I went through and I tested a bunch of these. Like I tested both of these guys, and I noticed that render times were up a lot because it's a fluid sim that it's actually rendering. I went to this guy and actually had a better look, but it looks like it says 2D clouds. It's a better look, and it renders way faster, and so this is the one that I liked and that I found. So if you right click on it and you go import Maya file, so you go click on that. It's going to take a minute, and then bring that into your file. And so it's given us two different objects, and if you go down here in your outliner, it's given us clouds and haze, and we're going to use both of these in different for different renders. And so let's go ahead and take this haze. We're going to scale it up, move it to the bottom, and move it out to right there. And then let's just put this off to the side for right now. So let's take a look through our shot cam here. Now if we were to render this, we will see what this fog looks like. So let's go ahead and render that. So that is our fog, but you can see that it has all of our grayscale geometry back there, which is not good to comp on top. We see this fog, and it is respecting the geometry, like it's going around the geometry, like it's not in front of this wing, but it's down here and it grads up. But so what we want to do is we want to actually make the geometry disappear, and to actually act as a matte object. And so anywhere where the geometry is, we want there to be a black hole, and that to be reflected in the alpha. So if you look here, this is the alpha channel. This is not going to work for our fog. And so let's go ahead and assign a shader to our geometry here. So let's go ahead and select everything, and then unselect the clouds and the haze. Oh, actually, we should actually create the shader first. So right here, if you go to, let's see if we can find this. It's called Use Background, and I don't know if I see it in here. If you just go in here, Use Background, it says Use Background Shader. If you double click on that, these are some of the values associated with that. So Let's go ahead and select everything here and unselect those two, and then assign the background shader to that. And then let's look and see if it's going to give us what we want. All right, so now you see this has this nice grad going up, and everything where there was geometry is now a matte object. Actually, well, you see how that doesn't work, so that's broken. It gives you the right image here, but the alpha does not work. So if we go into our Hypershade, double click on this guy, and bring down the matte opacity to 0, and then let's render this again. So now you can see that the image, this is the image that's rendered, and then this is the alpha. This is a great image now that can be comped on top of the matte painting. And because our matte painting is projected onto this geometry and respects the geometry, now you can comp this directly on top and it'll line up perfectly. And so you see this this great mesh or combining of CG elements and matte painted elements. It's quite nice. And so yeah, that looks good. And then what we're going to want to do, so let's go ahead and select go to our perspective view. Let's go ahead and select all of this, and then we're going to create a render layer. If you're not familiar with render layers, I'm not going to go into it really in depth here, but you have this tab that is display and renders, and right now I have a bunch of junk in there from the previous file, but I selected everything, and then I went in here and said create a new layer, and that's what this represents. So we'll want to, this little fog piece, we'll just go ahead and rename this grad fog. And select that piece of fog and just say remove. So now that's being removed from that render layer. And then, so if we go back down to our master layer, we're going to select everything now and then create a new one. Except this time we're going to take this grad fog and we're going to remove that guy. So let's go ahead and make this guy big. So now let's say if we go to our shot cam and take a look at this, we can see what it looks like. Let's scale this down here. So that is the ground fog right there, and that actually looks quite nice. And you can do some more of the moving it around so that there's a hole somewhere that you would like. Let's go ahead and render that again. Yeah, so there's some quite nice variation in that. These are supposed to be clouds, but we can use it for kind of misty ground. And so with these two different passes of it, the grad going up and this kind of splotchy fog on the ground, I think it's going to work quite nice together. And we can color correct those, and we'll do them in two different passes so that we can combine them, color correct them, and then percentage them on to our shot so that they're not full 100%, but maybe it's like 10 or 15%, so that this is a real subtle effect to our matte painting. The only thing though with this guy, and you'll get different every little cloud pre-built thing that you get will have like little things to it. If you play this, you can see that it has this is an animated cloud thing, and if you were to render this thing, it would be like some crazy thing was happening underneath here, and it's not really the look that I'm going for, to have all these clouds like move really fast. I want it just to be static, and so if you go into your Hypershade here, and then you click this guy up there to graph it, you can go through and you can tweak some of these settings to be what you want. The first thing is I'm just going to delete this expression that drives the time. And so now if we play through, our cloud simulation thing is static. So that's good. And if you double click in here, you can kind of dink around and find some of the settings. So if you go up to, see. So there's all these different settings in here that you can go through and try to find some things in here. Let's see, where was that? Yeah. So right here under shading, there was a transparency thing, and so I didn't want it to be a full 100%, so I wanted to bring down the transparency. So let's bring that down, and then let's render it again. Let's put that in the buffer though first so we can compare. Yeah, so now you're looking at it, and it's from this to this. So this is a quite nice effect. You get this little band, these little like cloud bandy things, and it's all splotchy and it's dark here, and that's quite a nice element, and it's pretty fast. And you saw how fast it renders. It rendered in 6 seconds. Some of the other volumes that I was using, they didn't look as nice as this. Well, they looked like clouds, really. And I think it was like a minute a frame and stuff. So six seconds a frame to a minute a frame is quite a big difference, and it's a better look. So if you have these set up as render layers, if you're not familiar with render layers, let's say Splotchy Fog. So if you want just these two render layers to render, then you just click, checkbox here, and then you send this to your farm, or to render on your local machine, you go up here to batch render, and it'll render those two and put them into folders for you and everything like that. So let's go ahead and render those and jump into Nuke, and we'll take a look at how to comp these elements into the matte painting and see kind of what we get. Okay, I have my two fog passes in Nuke, and they've been rendered. So you can see those two. And I think if we combine those, we'll get kind of a nice effect. So let's go ahead and merge these guys together. And we're going to want to put the fog on top of our render, and I'm just using this render because it's essentially like I've pre-comped it, and it's going to make testing this fog a lot easier to do. So let's go over here and then merge these guys together too. Swap the noodles so that this is over that. So yeah, so you can see that we have our fog. Let's just go ahead and I'm going to let that cache, and play. It won't take very long, but I'll let that play for you so we can get an idea of what it feels like to go through this stuff. All right, that's cached now, and let me just play that for you. So yeah, that's not bad. So you can see that it is a 3D element because we're seeing parallax all within this like cloudy stuff here at the bottom, and it's not color corrected. You know, it doesn't fit within our scene, but as far as the edges, it really matches up with everything. The only problem area that I can see here is this little area right here. But this is this grad at full strength, and I don't see that it would get up this far. We can also do a lot to crunch the grad of this so that it's stronger at the base and less strong up here, and it like cuts that off, and so our grad will be somewhere around here instead of going up that high. So you can see that it's that's the edge of the projection, and that's where my projection image doesn't line up with the geometry completely, so that's a problem area. But I don't think we'll have it go up that far. So, but yeah, this is quite a nice effect, and it makes it a little more mysterious. So let's go ahead and color correct this guy and see if we can get it to look better. So the first thing that I would do, that you could do here, is that you can start playing with the opacity of some of these passes. So if you go ahead and click on the merge, you can, start bringing back the opacity on some of these guys. So if you click that, so you can make this less opaque. So we can see a little more of our environment here. And then let's just grade these guys. I think first of all, this thing is super saturated. And so let's, instead of trying to deal with how saturated these colors are, let's desaturate it first, and then let's try to add some color back in. We'll do that with a color correct. And just bring down that saturation. So it's a little more of a neutral color. And now that it's a neutral color, it's going to be easier to push around in our grade node. So let's take a look at that. So look at that. Once we've killed the color, seems like it makes it a lot less noticeable. So let's go ahead and do that. You can either bring this back up again, and then on our grade, let's go ahead and kind of make it that more of that green color there. Actually, why don't we play this as being a little more blue, as if it's in the shadow, and then we will play this as being a little bit green, because that's kind of how we're playing our moonlight. Our moonlight is actually kind of green. Let's go up here. Just a little bit green right there. Maybe this guy is a little bit too blue. All right, so let's just, now that I've kind of done an initial color correction, let me cache that again for you, and we'll take a look and see if it's a nice effect. All right, now that that's cached, let's just take a look at our shot here. Yeah, I think that adds quite a bit to make the shot kind of dynamic. It's a little too purple back here, and I don't think there's enough fog on the angel or these foreground stuff, and so I'll probably play it up a little more on these guys, or double up the fog on these guys. And since they're through a different scanline render, I can isolate these and just run these fog layers through, and just affect these foreground guys. So that shouldn't be a problem. But yeah, so that's quite nice. So within I don't know how long we've been doing this for 15 minutes. We've got a nice element. The only thing that you have to worry about when you decide to use a 3D element, or that you're going to hand off your geometry to another department, which I've done before. Let's say they have an animated character walking through here, and they need that animated character to cast shadows onto the matte painting, or they have a light, zoom past, and they need to calculate, or they need to figure out the light bouncing off of things. And I've had to do that before, give my geometry to a new department. You just have to make sure, and your time gets spent in making sure that your geometry really lines up with your projections, so that there's not any funny business, especially if you're giving it to another department. You want to make sure that your stuff is looking nice and correct. So I'm going to continue to tweak these fog passes, and later I'll show you the result of what I've done.